Waiter waitresses of Reddit, what's the most awkward first date you've seen go down while working? A young couple was at my table. They were probably 16. She was way overdressed for Red Lobster and a movie, but it was cute. He went to pay and his card was declined. I felt so horrible walking back to the table. He said there should be plenty in his bank account, and I asked if he had put gas in his car before the date. He said he filled up his truck. Some gas stations here hold the amount twice on a debit card after a certain hour, and it drops off the next day. The poor kid was so embarrassed he had no idea what to do. My boss paid for his meal, my tip, and gave him money for the movie they were planning to go to. Kid came back in 2 days later with all the money to pay my boss back. This one starts out awkward but takes a bit of a turn. I'm a host. I sat a gentleman, very well dressed, named Greg, who told me he was meeting a girl for their first date. About half an hour passes, and no one shows up. It's a Sunday night, so it's pretty slow, so I come by and check on him. He hasn't heard from her or anything. Another half hour, then another. He finishes his entree, pays, and walks up to me and says, "Damn, she's not coming." Whatever. I try and convince him to stick it out at the bar for a little bit, but he isn't having it. He leaves. 20 minutes later, a girl shows up. She says her phone is dead and her car broke down on the way to her date with a guy named Greg. I say he got fed up and left, and she starts to cry because she really thinks she fucked up. I tell her it'll be okay. The guy signed up for a rewards program, and we had his cell number. Officially I'm not supposed to do this, but I called him up and told him his date was here, and he didn't believe me, so I put her on the phone and he was back 20 minutes later. They seemed to really hit it off, and as he left he said, "Thanks man," and slipped me a $5, the only direct tip I've ever gotten. They just came in together yesterday. It makes me really happy that they're still dating. I've been waiting for so long to tell this story. So I'm a server at Red Robin, and I once served a teenage couple probably around 17 or 18, easily seniors in high school. They had obviously been dating for a while since they already knew what they wanted and ordered for each other. The date night seemed to go pretty well. They ordered their drinks, ordered an appetizer, then ordered their food. Only their drinks had come out yet when finally, after holding hands for a long while, the guy looks into the girl's eyes and apparently broke up with her. I had been standing from a distance keeping an eye on my tables when suddenly I see this happening and watch the girl's face just turn from happiness to just absolute horror. Tears well up and she started banging her fists on the table, screaming out at him that he's an a-hole and whatnot. Everyone in the restaurant can hear it, and everything just stops. As she's becoming more and more volatile, he's trying to calm her down. I'm not sure what to do at this point. Even my manager had come out and looked at me as if we both didn't know how to handle this. Finally the guy yells, Fine. If you don't want to be civil then I'll go." She begs him to stay, but he pries himself away and beelines for the door. She doesn't follow him. He passes me on the way to the door, stops, and walks back towards me. He hands me $50 and says, "You can already obviously see why I did what I did. I just apologize that you had to deal with this here and now. Take care of her, and make sure she's okay." He then leaves. She sat for the next 3 hours, not crying, but just staring blankly into the wall. She ate both of their meals and the tower of onion rings. More sad than awkward. A guy in a wheelchair comes in at about 1:45. Says he has a date at 3, but the only ride he had there was early. So I sat him at a table for 2. He munches on bread for a while and decides to go outside a bit. He ends up coming back in about 20 minutes later and starts telling me and the host I'm working with cheesy jokes. He also mentions that he used to be a policeman before he became wheelchair bound. He also told us his date is from Panama. The other host and I had a bad feeling about this situation at that point. 3 o'clock rolls around and I see the guy anxiously glancing between his phone and the door. About 45 minutes pass of this before he finally leaves. This was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. As a former server, I have to say it's not the first dates that stick out. It is the, "We're breaking up and let's have dinner and talk about it" tables that really stay with you. My wife broke up with me while we were dating at an Indian restaurant. We made up and have been married about 8 years now, but it took a damn long time before I could eat Indian food again. We once had an interesting breakup happen in our restaurant. Young woman arrives with an older man. She asks for a table for two, but says that the person she is meeting won't be there for another hour. The man she was with asked to be seated alone, but at a table close to where the woman was sitting. They sit facing each other. The woman was very nervous, talking very quietly and wringing her hands. The man seemed very on edge as well. The joiner arrives, a man who looks about the woman's age. She had asked the server to give them some time before approaching the table after he arrived. Server complied. What we watched happen next was about what you'd expect. Woman is quietly stammering something to the guy. He is turning red, in anger, and has his fists as tight as can be on top of the table. He suddenly gets up, swears at her, and throws his water at her before storming off. We learned afterward that the girl had come in to break up with her abusive boyfriend and had brought her ex-cop dad in with her in case things got out of hand. They didn't purchase anything, but they did tip the server very generously, $20 or so, for her time. It was quite the scene to watch from the host stand. At the end of the dinner, two couples on a double date dine and dash. I chased them down, and the girls had no clue. Their dates had told them they already paid. The girls ended paying. The guys had no cash. I'm a hostess, and when we seat people we have to talk about the specials happening that day. Well, anywho, two people come in and they don't appear to be a couple. Both were very stern looking. I start giving my spiel about the drink specials. She cuts me off and says she won't be drinking tonight. The guy looks at her and asks why. She tells him she's pregnant. And let's keep in mind that I am right there in between them with no option to walk away because I am still holding the menus. Well, he freaks out, quickly questioning her, and getting very angry, she starts yelling at him. A lot of tension is floating around, and in the midst of all this anger about being pregnant I chime in and mention that we are also having a special on our baby back ribs. The moment after I realize what I just said, they are staring at me with their jaws dropped. I look them dead in the eye and walk away. I am not good in these types of situations. This younger lady comes in by herself, comes up to the bar, and says she'd like a table in the back, alone. It's a slow night, I was working alone, so I sat her, brought her a drink, etc. She's there for about an hour, has a couple of drinks, and keeps checking her phone. I finally asked her if she was expecting someone, and her response was a sad smile and a nod. Almost immediately after that, this guy, early 30s, comes in, asks for a table for two. On his arm is this slightly trashy, very early 20s girl who's already drunk, loud, and fucking obnoxious. She keeps talking about how lucky she is to finally get this guy out with her, how it's been the first best date ever. I get them their food order, and they can barely keep their hands off of each other. I also noticed that the lady sitting by herself has gone white as a ghost, and is shaking a little bit. She takes out her cell phone, and takes a few pictures. About this point I know what's going on, and I just try to avoid it. Lady number one walks up, puts some papers down on the table, and says, "We're getting divorced." She then looks at the lady, who turns out to be her little sister, and tells her to never talk to her again. She then comes up, pays for her meal, and walks out, leaving the most utterly destroyed first date I have ever seen. It was phenomenal. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.